All right, welcome. Day 21, 75 Refined. We are going through the remainder of 1 Samuel and into the first two chapters of 2 Samuel. The quote of the day comes from Mike Rowe, which says, "Work ethic is important because, unlike intelligence, athleticism, charisma, or any other natural attribute, it's a choice. It costs very little, or it costs nothing rather, to work hard, be on time, things like that." So take that to heart. All right, let's get into a recap of what we read today. So again, we are in the end of 1 Samuel, beginning 2 Samuel. Now, in Hebrew, the book of Samuel, which would be Shemuel, basically, is one book. It's not two separate books. Once again, a recurring theme with the modern Bible, especially the Old Testament, it was heavily influenced by how the Septuagint ordered things. In the Septuagint, it was deemed too long to just be one book, and so Septuagint split up Samuel to First and Second Samuel, and then the Book of Kings to First and Second Kings, and then even the Book of Chronicles. Once we get there, the Book of Chronicles has historically been at the end of the Old Testament and kind of gives a different viewpoint on the same stories, effectively, as First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings. The Book of Chronicles kind of goes over that as well. A lot of overlap in terms of the stories, but a different focus. So kind of like we see that with the Gospels, where the Gospels tell the same story, but there's different focuses on different key aspects as we're going through it. So as we get into day 21, the section of the book closes with 1 Samuel, opens to 2 Samuel. Saul's reign ends and David begins to step into his leadership, but it's a process, right? So we're going to walk through that. Let's first talk about Jonathan and David. So this can't be understated. They were very close friends. Some progressive churches will misinterpret certain lines and verses in the Bible to say that there's some homosexual relationship between the two of them. There wasn't. That's once again, that's using the eye of what's called presentism to look back and put our modern twist onto things. That is entirely made up. It's to push an agenda, basically, is what it is. But here's what we understand about loyalty. Jonathan understands that David will be king. Okay, in 1 Samuel 23:17, he says, "You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you." Jonathan knows that what that means for him personally is that he will not become king. He will not be the successor to his father Saul. And he's good with that. And that's because the he understands what God is doing, not what he wants. Would he want to be king? Sure, he would. Absolutely, who wouldn't want to be king? It's like the old Lion King song, "Just can't wait to be king." Anyways, but Jonathan doesn't. He doesn't care about that. He cares more, one, about his friend David, but two, about God's promise. He knows that David is meant to be anointed as king. Um, so the relationship between described is covenant language between Jonathan and David. The Hebrew terminology speaks specifically of loyalty, commitment, and a binding agreement. There is no indication of anything in the text immoral or romantic. This comes entirely from progressive Christianity. Then we get into the priests at Nob. So earlier in this section, David seeks help from Ahimelech, the priest, in 1 Samuel 21, and he does not fully explain why he's there. All right, and then Doeg reports to Saul, and then in 22, Saul orders the execution of the priests. His guards refuse to do it, but Doeg carries it out. When Abiathar escapes and comes to David, here's what David says. He takes responsibility for this. He says, "I am responsible for the deaths of everyone in your father's family." He owns it. It's a great book by Jocko Willink. You've heard some of his quotes before, and it's called Extreme Ownership. It's about taking ownership over things. Fantastic book. If you've not read the book or heard the audiobook, I highly recommend it. It's organized in a really cool way where he kind of tells a war story. He was a commander in the SEAL teams. He tells a war story, and then he goes on to tell the application of it, and then a business application for it as well. It's really, really interesting. Saul and the medium at Endor. Let me just first say, it's not that Endor. I know a lot of you Star Wars nerds are probably thinking, oh, the Forest Moon. It's not that Endor. It's a different Endor. It's the real Endor. So in chapter 28, the situation is wild. The Philistines are advancing. Saul is looking for guidance. Samuel is dead. Okay, to quote Charles Dickens, the beginning of Christmas Carol, Samuel was dead to begin with. But it says, when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, not in dreams or by Urim or by the prophets. Instead of repentance, Saul turns to the witch at Endor, the medium at Endor. It's kind of like a psychic kind of a thing. So the text presents this figure who appears to Saul as Samuel, right? And the psychic, the medium, herself is startled, and the message repeats what Samuel has already declared. So this is just repeating what Samuel already said to Saul. And it's important to note that necromancy is not something that is celebrated or allowed in the Bible. So there's a lot of controversy around this passage. Whereas, was this really Saul? Was it what we would call a familiar spirit, a demon pretending to be Saul, or what was it? There's nothing in the text that really tells us exactly what it was. The closest that we can come up with is that it was just legitimately, not Saul, Samuel. That it was legitimately Samuel. And why God would allow this in this moment, I don't know. But what we do know is that Saul was not comforted. He was seeking comfort. He was seeking some sort of peace from Samuel, from the spirit of Samuel, but he didn't get it. And God already made a decree to him and said, this is how it's going to be, whether you like it or not. And this is what it ends up being. In 1 Samuel 31, Saul is mortally wounded in battle, and then he falls on his sword, and his sons die along with him. And this is the end of Saul's reign. And in 2 Samuel chapter 1, David hears about Saul's death, and Amalekite claims that he's the one who finished Saul off. So he comes out there lying, being like, oh, yeah, I killed Saul for you. And, woohoo, look at me. And kind of looking for some sort of reward or favor with who will be the newly anointed king. And David instead has this man executed. He's like, how could you kill God's anointed? Even though this guy didn't actually do it, he's just taking credit for it. David has him murdered. 2 Samuel 1:19, how the mighty have fallen. David mourns for Saul and Jonathan. He doesn't celebrate their deaths, but he honors the king publicly. Man, we don't see that in any political discourse ever. We even see throughout the last few chapters, David had two opportunities to take out Saul. The first time, he cuts off the corner of his robe while Saul is relieving himself. And he must have taken off his robe, set it to the side, and David snuck over there, cut a little bit off while Saul was having his constitutional. And later, while Saul is sleeping, it says that the Lord put a deep sleep over everyone, and he could have taken a spear and run it through Saul, but instead he takes the spear, takes the water jug, and then goes off a little distance and says, "Oh boys, look what I have here." And for those of you, the Blazing Saddle reference, don't worry about it. But he shows once again that the Lord has delivered you to me, but I'm showing you mercy. Then we get into 2 Samuel chapter 2. David is anointing king over Judah and Hebron. However, the rest of Israel follows Saul's son. And so the kingdom is currently split. This is not the divided kingdom that we hear about later, but this is a division right now. And so he was anointed years earlier. So sometimes this is the thing that we have to understand today during church, for those of you who attend church at Triumphant Life. But for those of you who don't, Pastor Ben was reading out of the book of Malachi, and he was talking about gradually, then suddenly. So things happen gradually, kind of takes time, and then suddenly it just all happens all at once. But there's this kind of leading up to it. And this is really how it is for David. He was anointed king years ago. And through all that, he had to, or no, I shouldn't say anointed. He was, but yeah, he was anointed king by Samuel. But then it took many, many years, him fighting for his life, him fleeing, him pretending to be a crazy person. You read that in the text. But it took a long time until finally it comes to fruition. And when it comes to fruition, it comes in fast and it comes in hard. So this is the beginning of his raid. The kingdom is not yet unified, but his leadership kind of begins in stages. And then what we see in this section is Saul's long pattern of disobedience reaches its end. Jonathan submits to God's plan. David acknowledges his own failures, and he'll have more failures to come. We will see that. Let me just type something out here. And let's see. And then the kingdom again slowly slowly transitions. It's not an immediate thing. And the thread we see here with Christ is that Jesus is the true king, but he comes in that line of David. We're going to see that David is this righteous king that is promised to Israel, but the true king is Christ. And same thing with Christ is that he doesn't immediately sit on the throne. He comes humbly, just like David did. And so that's the common theme. Jesus is also publicly affirmed before he takes his throne. This is my beloved son with whom I am well pleased. He's anointed and then he's tested in the wilderness. And David is tested in the wilderness. He's recognized as the coming king, but he's also rejected. Spends years hunted, misunderstood, and waiting. This is that similar pattern, that similar thread. David, one second. David takes responsibility. He acknowledges his guilt on the death of the priest, but Jesus is different. He bears the responsibility. Okay, do you catch that? So while David takes responsibility, Jesus bears responsibility for something he had never done. Now, David contributes to the situation. Christ bears no responsibility, but he takes on that responsibility voluntarily. But that's all I have for you today, friends. It was a lot, and we're going to get into even more. The story of David is a wild ride, and I'm happy that we're able to go through this. So we're going to continue going through. So let's see. So far in 21 days, we've done Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, and now 1 Samuel, and we're into 2 Samuel. So we're on our 10th book in 21 days out of 66 books in a total of 75 days. It's a wild ride. So like, subscribe, comment, do all the things. The comments and the likes actually do help with the engagement. So please, if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. But also put a comment in there. What are you getting out of the text? What are you getting out of the reading? What are the threads that you're seeing within the story and the arc with Christ? Anyways, that's all I have for you. Love you. We will see you tomorrow.